as I can, they wanted to remind me, huh? I'm gonna be as open and as tolerant and as loving as I can possibly be in this relationship. And she gave me the same thing. And I experienced God on a new level. I experienced it within a relationship uh, that showed, I mean, just lots of mercy to me. And I hope that she feels the same way. But I'm sitting in meetings again, and I'm back in the big shot chair. I wear these hats that just drown me. And I've got this little book that I write my spiritual epiphanies in, and I don't know why it was sitting on the shelf behind me right before this, and I grabbed it and I kind of was thumbing through it. And a couple of these things are just what I was going through at the time, so I'm going to read them to you. If this isn't what you wanted, it's what you're getting. This happened back on right before COVID. I was in an 8 a.m. group, and I was judging their meeting and approach to the newcomer. Very heavy fellowship meeting. Little to no mention of step work. Always well attended, but no service in district or area. I judged them everywhere I could. And I then realized I came often and always sat resentful as they smiled, enjoying one another. It dawned on me. God's here too. It's not, I'm not angry that they're wrong. I'm angry that they're not following me. And that's the reality of me sitting in those meetings. I'm right, and you ought to see it. And those people are happy and they're free. And when I cannot release myself from these ideas of what you should be, or how you should act, or what you should say in a meeting of AA or any in the spiritual realm whatsoever, I mean, that's kind of where I show up. And then there's this other one. It's the coronavirus. So 2019 hit, and I was in a really good space initially. Initially, I had been on about 2 years of some really good meditation regimen. I had been a lot of prayer, had been working with a good amount of drunks. I'd balanced out my work life, work AA life and kids. It was all really balanced and going extremely well. My relationship was doing well. And then we had the quarantine, and I found initially a way to be of service to Alcoholics Anonymous right from the get. I mean, I know that I'm not the kind of guy who can just sit back and do nothing. And so this is what it says. It says coronavirus has us in quarantine for several weeks. Meetings and conferences are going strong online. This brought me to the realization of how much I rely on being asked to speak for self-worth. And there was no truer statement at that time, because here in my local community, prior to that time, I would walk into that room at any given time, and the love and the hugs, and that's what I thrived on, rather than the obedience and prayerfulness and the experience of watching others grow in this program. It was all about me. And again, I'd got into some Thomas Merton, and there was a quote that kind of hit me on that, and it says, "These dictates of a domineering and insensible father are more often seeds of hatred than of love." So I'd gotten this real dogmatic place with my program, my spiritual program, and I've got to believe either God is roomy, all-inclusive, never exclusive or forbidding for those who earnestly seek, or he can only be found through this like line by line way, right? And which is insane. It worked for me. It works for me. It works for the guys that I sponsor. But for me to be so judgmental on how people have a spiritual awakening within the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous is plain insanity. But it says that these dictates of a domineering and insensible father are more often seeds of hatred than of love. That's if that is our concept of the will of God, we cannot possibly seek the obscure and intimate mystery of the encounter that takes place in contemplation. will only desire only to fly as far as possible from him and hide our faces from his forever. Our conception of God says more about us than it ever could God. It's kind of what I got out of that. And so now I'm in this position mid-COVID where I'm incapable of praying. And I'm waking up every day feeling sentenced to another day of life without a drink. And it's the same day over and over and over. It's the same complaints from her. It's the same routine with the kids. There's no one else. And I've completely been stripped of that badge of honor that I had been seeking by going to all these meetings and sponsoring all these guys. I mean, there was a right before all that. I mean, I was sponsoring 30 men. You know, I don't know that anybody can handle 30 men, but I assuredly could not in any way that would be impactful to them in their spiritual condition. And I don't know, I kind of just I was on the floor in the fetal position, having ended my relationship, wondering if I should die. I mean, wondering if there's anything to really left here to do. And the change, I think, came slowly. I mean, you know, it's taking the steps, or, you know, taking the action again. Bill talked about it pretty, you know, it's like taking all of the action that you can possibly take and being aware of every thought and being aware of every intention through it all to dig yourself out of this place. And I mean, that's where I was willing to do that. And the first phone call came to Tom, and he was willing to listen to the inventory that I'd been hiding from. And I got that done and went back out and made some amends. And then it looks like, you know, I can't feel God when I pray, you know, and I'm not capable of touching any of you. I'm not capable of going and joining in harmonious and brotherly action. I'm not even capable of sponsoring a man in person right now that's hurting with intentions of only helping him. And so Brian P started calling me every morning. You know, it was a weird thing. I'm sitting here at the table. I've sat at this place for so long now, it feels like. And one morning, 8:30 in the morning, Brian calls. He's like, I don't know why, but, you know, I just came out of a dark place and something told me I need to call you. And I just, you know, and just like we do, and just kind of let it all out. And he said, I tell you what, I understand. I just got out of that spot. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to call you every single morning, and we're going to spend 7 minutes of meditation together. We're going to say prayers that you're not going to feel, and we're going to do it in spite of that. And if you continue to do this, there's a good chance that you'll walk out of this a free man again. And I begrudgingly agreed because I respect and love Brian that much. And initially, it's all it was. It was just absolute nothing. It was me talking to Brian, him sitting and meditating, and me thinking about everything I got to do, you know, all day long to keep myself occupied. And I got a little bit free some months down the road, and then I got a little bit freer, and then some things began to change again. And that's what this is all about. I'm just looking for some change, man. You know, God's always got winking at me. Right after my divorce, I'm in the worst place I've ever been in my entire life. I mean, I am sobbing, crying, and I decided I was going to go camping by myself. Because, I mean, what better place to be when you're just an absolutely suicidal and homicidal than be in the woods completely alone. So that's what I decided I'm going to do. I jump into my car and I start heading down the Red River Gorge in Kentucky. And I'm just, you know, listening to music and kind of jamming. And I realized I'd gone 45 minutes out of the way where I was trying to get to. And I'm angry and just, damn, you know, I'm going to take this back way. So I get headed down this road in the middle of nowhere. And alongside the road, I see this, I mean, old man. I mean, you know, he looked his age. He just wasn't doing real well, and he had his thumb out. I just thought I passed him because it's not my first instinct to be of service to somebody. And then the whisper came, and it said, "Turn around." And so I took the deep breath, and I turned the car around the first driveway I found. And I found this man still standing there with his thumb out, and I said, "Get on in." And we got in the car together, and he had just been attacked by a dog and was needing some attention to his leg. And he'd walked 17 miles through the woods of eastern Kentucky digging ginseng. And he was telling me all about his ginseng digging and how he loved to do it, and how his son just died, but everything was going to be okay because the Lord has got him. And how his wife's currently got cancer, but you know what? Everything's going to be just fine. And I'm listening to this man. I'm hearing the deep appreciation of his life in his voice. And I'm hearing the absolute love of whatever creator he was serving that day. And it touched me enough to where when I got down, at the end of that ride, I didn't want him to get out. I'm just, and I thought to myself, wow, God, thank you. It's not always the experience of helping somebody in the rooms that gives me the boost to go on. And that day, it certainly wasn't. So yeah, I don't know how much time have I ate up. 38 minutes. That's not too bad.
You're good.
I'm good. All right. So yeah, I mean, at the beginning of this year, I had come out of it, and here in Kentucky, Ohio, Indiana area, we started coming out of the house somewhere around March. And all the sponsees, except for a few ones that I just have a real close tie to, it all left. And I was really itching to get back to being of service to other people. I as well as I do it completely just making this all about me, I was in a position of love, expressing my heart to another individual to try to get them to express theirs. And I just really needed that contact. And so we got our home group started back up, but I just wasn't catching any new guys. I mean, I don't know how you guys are doing right now with it, but I wasn't able to. And I got asked to talk to this treatment center one day, and the snarling drunk over in the corner at the end of my talk is just bawling his eyes out. And I went over and I talked to him, and he said, "Look, man, there ain't no hope for me. It's just none. Is there anything that you can do for me? Is there any way that you can, show me what you did?" And there's just an agreement there. There's just like a heart-to-heart agreement of, I'll go to any length for you if you'll go to any length for yourself. And the two of us just clicked. The man had been homeless for 3 years. The ones that you get and they have little to no trust to even speak to you. Like, that's the kind of guy he was. Like, he's not the guy who just got the DUI or, the wife kicked him out. This is the guy who distrusts humanity at such a level that talking to you is just unbearable to him. And I recognize this immediately. And the moment he was released from the treatment center, I had one of my guys was working there. I went over and I told him, I said, "I'll come pick him up." And I went over and picked him up. And I got lit up again. The service today, I don't think he knows what he's meant to me over the past 4 or 5 months, whatever it's been. The service that I've got to do him it's all been behind the scenes. This isn't a guy that I'm pulling up to the front of the line and showing everybody. This isn't a guy, I'm doing this I'm showing up in his life the way that I would want God to show up in mine, I hope, just completely willing to be of service to this man at any hour of the day. And being able to do that once again, man, that's some freedom. to not have demands on the world as it comes at me. And, Kate today said, you're really good at a lot of this stuff, but it's hard to express when you're not always fighting life. I don't fight life a lot. I learned that in prison, to be honest with you. Things are going to not go your way today. And, there's a good chance most things won't go your way today. So when they don't, hell, we'll just let them go and go on to the next thing. We got to hope for the future, something will. I don't know that Bill ever got the freedom from this that he was looking for. He'd been completely separated from our fellowship due to us deifying him, which some of us still do. He just really had a tough time in the end. But I do believe that there is freedom from the destruction of self as I've known it, the egoic terror that I create within my own life just by being of service to other human beings and by giving the most amount of love that I can. So I don't know what the hell y'all got out of that, but that's all I got. Thanks.
Thanks. Thank you, Brad. Why don't you pick somebody and then pick somebody else, and then we'll see who raises their hand after that. I bet we'll get some raised hands, but just pick a couple people.
Well, I see Derek Mountain.
Thanks, Brad. Great to hear you. Great to see you. Love you, brother. My name's Derek. I am an alcoholic. And boy, you and I are made from the same cloth, Brad. Like, I really identified with a lot of what you talked about. Particularly that, I don't know the wording you use, but I'll call it spiritual warfare. That point I've gotten to a couple times in my sobriety where I'm just judging everybody and everything and nobody's doing it right. And I remember the first time I hit that spot, I was about 2.5 years in. I was on fire for AAA. I was working with a couple of guys and going to a lot of meetings. And I was hanging out with Prince at his house on Wednesdays, going through traditions and concepts. And boy, that really gave me some ammunition to just, go into these meetings and you're not doing it right. And this one's treasure been there for 12 years. And that one's 7 tradition is going to who knows what. And I found myself at the end of May feeling like I don't belong here. Like I felt so separated in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I didn't understand why, because I was checking all the boxes. And I did some inventory and I saw that I had taken this thing that had been so lovingly handed to me, these beautiful spiritual tools, and I had sharpened them into weapons. And boy, it sure didn't feel very good. Nobody had separated me from Alcoholics Anonymous. I had separated myself through my judgment. And I didn't really know what to do with that, and I 5th stepped it all. And I remember sitting at home before I did 6 and 7. And it occurred to me that I talked to Don one time about prayer. I was struggling really hard with prayer and how to pray and how not to pray. And I said, I hear this stuff in meetings sometimes, like, don't ever pray for patience, because then God's going to throw a bunch of assholes in your life. And I was like, is that true? And he chuckled and said, oh, I don't know. And I said, well, what do you know? And he wouldn't tell you how to do things, because then he thought you'd try and mimic him, right? He wanted you to have your own experience. But he did say this. He said, what I know is that if I'm in inventory and I notice that I'm lacking in something, I will sometimes ask God to show me the way of that. So if I, for instance, notice that I'm lacking in patience, and I pray that God show me the way of patience, maybe some incredibly patient, like Mother Teresa-like person will cross my path, and I'll get to see what that looks like in action, And I think I kind of tucked that away. And so I did this 5th step, and I'm sitting at home doing 6 and 7. And it occurred to me, maybe I should ask that I be shown the way of humility. For obviously, I don't know what it looks like in action, right? And I threw that into the end of my 7th step prayer. And by now it's like the end of July, and I went to FOTS that year, and I wound up having a beautiful example of humility cross my path at FOTS that year. And she's in the other room. We've been married for 16 years. Like, I don't know how this stuff is supposed to look all the time, but I dig myself into these deep, dark places. And when I say uncle, and I'm willing to do anything to come out of it, and I do the tried and true method, I just work the steps again and allow this new power to flow in, then I get rocketed into places that I couldn't even imagine. So I really appreciate your story. It kind of reminded me of that tonight. I hadn't thought about that in a while, and I appreciate it. Love you, brother.
Oh, Mr. Teener.
Thanks, Brad. It was excellent as expected. The Jason Alcoholic. Yeah, man. I mean, we've talked about this a bunch. I mean, I suffer just like you from the grandiosity thing. I mean, everything I do, I'm thinking how somebody's viewing it. I mean, and in every area of my life, whether it be work, home, anything. I'm very attached to that idea and how people are viewing and everything. And when we first met, I was kind of going through a lot of the same stuff you were talking about, and kind of what I saw is that like I kind of boiled down to the program to this like equation of like, oh, if I do these like X, Y, Z, I'm definitely going to feel better. You know what I mean? And in reality, I think I took having that approach kind of like took God out of it, honestly. I mean, just because I felt like it was just like this, almost like if I just take these actions, like it's just going to automatically change my attitude. And for whatever reason, it didn't. And I think part of it is that like I didn't really believe in a power greater than myself that like I don't know, was actively involved in my life in any way. And that's just always been a really hard concept for me throughout my sobriety. It's like and it's hard to like say a prayer or pray at all, really, if like if deep down you don't really think it's doing anything. And that's kind of like where I was at. And it was hard for me to talk about it, because like if I the few times I tried to talk about it in a meeting, man, I got people coming up to me saying like, that doesn't sound like 18 years of sobriety. And it's like, okay, well, well, that's what it is. so I don't know what to tell you. And it just made me not want to talk about it. I mean, that's really, really what it is. And then when I got to that spot, it was like, oh man, I just got to listen to, all these like big book studies and like just show up at the halfway house and, and it'll all get better. And I just had so much like stuff that came up in inventory and, I mean, you heard my fifth steps, how attached I am to just the idea of what I think people should view me as. And it just runs my life, man. So I don't know, I could relate a lot to what you said, and always good to hear you share. So I will pass. Thanks.
Brad, you see any hands up?
I don't see any.
Just call on somebody.
Oh, okay. I'm calling on somebody. All right.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you do that.
All right, I can do that. Oh well. Jessica's sitting right next to Jason, so we'll go with that.
Hi, I'm Jessica. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you, Brad. I was sitting here and I don't know. I know hear you talking about your struggles with, your motivations behind these things and trying to be somebody in AA. And I just sitting here feel like impressed to tell you that how much it mattered what you did last year. And that from where I sit, like you changed our life by being there right at that moment, March 16, I think it was, as soon as everything shut down. Here was something that we got into every week, twice a week, and it changed our whole life. So I just felt, I know I'm not, trying to give you that praise that you're talking about I'm not trying to kill you, but I just felt like he used it, like God used that and it mattered. And I just wanted to tell you that. So I'll pass.
Well, you
How
almost
about is Gary still on there?
And
Gary.
I was afraid of that.
I didn't see him.
I'm Gary, I'm an alcoholic. I was thinking, particularly when you were talking about, well, let me put it this way. I spent an awful lot of time working at a office here and doing a lot of service there, and the intergroup office and things like that. I got to know a lot of people, and I really did start thinking I'm somebody. And that's come and gone with me over the years, God knows how many times with that. And so lately, I'm not doing that, and a little job, and you know, my dry date's December 3rd, 1964, and that's a long time. And so tonight, though, I did get a kick out of it. Derek was talking about my friend Don, and that, and I sit here like that, and I knew how well I knew him, but Bob Olson and I will talk about Don a lot, but the first thing you need to know about him is we knew him before he was a superstar. And he really wasn't the guy as you think he is, but he was touched by somebody and touched an awful lot of other people with that. But I want to thank you, Brad. That was a good talk, and I love when I hear a good, honest talking, and it does a lot for me. That is, I Julie and I got to spend last weekend with Tom and Wanda down in Nashville, and just quick message to them. For dinner tonight, I ate some green chili stew that that Julie made, and it was wonderful. And so I poured a bunch of it over some bean burritos I had made, and I'm sitting here pretty uncomfortable. That was a lot of food, and I'm not going to be on the page long, I don't think. But yeah, thanks to Juana, it was wonderful. That's true. That's true. But thanks, Brad. I enjoyed your talk. Take it easy.
Well, Don.
hi, Brad. I appreciate your honesty. I'm Dawn alcoholic. You know, I kind of wanted to turn my camera off tonight because I feel like all my little pride has been wounded today. So I kind of know what you're talking about. I wanted my camera off. I was like, oh God, Brad's gonna call on me, and kind of like Gary, like kind of knew this was gonna happen. But as I was listening to you, and I was listening to the reading, something popped out here to me that I've just never heard before. When the reading went on, it says, plainly, I could not avail myself to God's love until I was able to offer it back to him by loving as he would have me. And that whole idea of loving as God would have me is something that I'm familiar with, but today I'm reminded of how how maybe I'm not using that as much as I would like. And my pride and my ego got wounded today, and all of it surrounding my basic flaw being dependence, most absolute dependence on people and circumstances to supply me with prestige, security, and the like. And then, you know, you come in and talk about that. So it's, you know, there's no coincidence for me today. And as you were reading the humility prayer, I caught a few words of it, and then I got on Google and Googled it. I said, I need this. And it's interesting because, you know, I am prey to popularity contests in AA. I am prey to that. And, you know, I show up at a lot of places, and generally I'm well received. Let's just put it that way. But when my dependence becomes part of that, as opposed to as God would have me be. You know, I got the cart before the horse. And you know, this month I've been challenged, and I will say that with no fear of admitting that it has been a huge challenge to me to I don't want to say deal with, but that's the only word I can come up with at the moment, my family of origin and my mom. And she is presenting me with the fact that I need to love as God would have me love, not as I would, because I ran away from home at 14 years old and said, see ya. And I never went back. And I never went back emotionally, even if I went back physically. And I am being challenged to actually be of service to a person that I just don't even have a whole lot of attachment to. And my self-centered, you know, alcoholic opera, me, isn't just, this ain't about me. And that's been the lesson of generally like the past month for me, is this ain't about you, Dawn. And welcome to reality. And you know, it's just been an eye-opener for me that I have to show up because it's the right thing to do. Not because it's entertaining or, you know, all that. There's no glamour, there's no appears to me any reward coming at the end of this. As a matter of fact, it looks like it's going to end in a not good way to me. I don't know if that's true though, because God has a lot more in mind for me. But the one thing that I can say is that AA gives me an opportunity to continue to mature, even when I don't want to. And I'm, you know, clearly not where I would like to be. And hopefully, you know, look, I've been gathering up new prayers today because I need new material. So thank you for that, Brad. And thank you for your honesty, because, you know, we can all come in here and report how great and wonderful we're doing. And we can all come in here and, you know, read the book and do the literature. And some of us actually know some of it by heart, you know, but it won't get you anywhere when you're not getting what you want when you want it, and, you know, demands for more and better. So thank you for sharing, because it makes me know that I actually have far to go and we're still doing this together. And that's important to me. Thanks.
So we actually got a couple hands up. So looks like Dennis or Joanna or both.
I'm Joanna. I'm an alcoholic. I look like a little dog, but I'm a human. I'm a person, not a dog. So I wanted to, well, first of all, I do want to thank you, Brad, for your honesty. That was good. But I'm going to say a few things that are contrary to what you said. First of all, I do not believe in God, and I have 25 years, so I've been doing this for a long time. But I do believe in the steps, and the steps are extremely important. And this is my take on it. First of all, I have learned in recovery that the best I can do is be a human. I can't be God. I can't be more than human. I just have to be a human. And that means I can't fix you, or you can't fix me. It means that the best I can do is you know, this humility we talk about, which is very appealing to me, and there's a lot of freedom because we end up being right size. We don't have to be the savior of the world, nor do we have to be the scum of the world. We're just ordinary drunks and ordinary humans. And that's very freeing for me. Now, here's the take on the steps. There's a suggestion that if you jump out of a plane, you take a parachute with you. Well, I can guarantee you that if you take a parachute or not take a parachute, you're going to get very different results. And that's how I see the steps. And that's how I see prayer. I mean, I pray every day, but I don't believe in God. But I do believe in the power of prayer and meditation, for that matter, actually, because the result of my actions matter. The result of, now, step one teaches me that not only am I allowed to be a human, and I run this by the Serenity Prayer, but I need to find out if there's an action I need to take, and often there is. But the result of that action is not up to me. I'm powerless over the result of any action I take. And that's very freeing as well, because it's based on honesty, on self-honesty. So that's actually empowering, not, and I make a distinction between being helpless and being powerless. I'm definitely powerless, but I'm not helpless. Step two, the principle behind step two is the principle of hope. And that means that this is a spiritual program and there's always a solution. I may not see the solution right away, but there is always a solution. Step three, I'd like to practice not knowing, trusting, and surrendering. Now, not knowing, why? Because I'm a human, so there's no possibility that I could know everything, because that's just not possible. And we're doing self-honesty. And the compass of the truth. And the second thing is we're practicing trusting, because that's hard for us alcoholics. And the third thing, we're doing surrender. Now, the appeal of grandiosity, I have come to the conclusion that it's the appeal because it presents as if we were, that it protects us, when in fact it doesn't, but it has that, and if we're human, then we have to admit we're vulnerable. And who the hell wants to admit that they're vulnerable? Nobody that I know of, and certainly not an alcoholic or not a human. So grandiosity has a lot of appeal, but it's a ephemeral, it's a fake appeal. So the honesty, the truth is that we are vulnerable and we can't protect ourselves or others. I mean, we can take some steps and we can certainly practice loving kindness and we can practice a lot of stuff, but ultimately we can't. There's no such thing as ultimate security. We're just humans. So I don't know. The steps to me have set me free, and the principles behind these steps have set me even freer. So I am a firm believer of practicing the steps, and it's something I have to live. I can't rest on my laurels and say, oh, I did this yesterday. Oh, okay, well, no, I have to do it all over again today. Every single day, I have to do 1, 2, 3, and actually all the rest of the steps too. And so, and I don't know if you've ever looked at step 12, but it says, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. Now that's a very profound statement. It says that I have to do 11 things every day, and I will have a spiritual awakening, regardless of what I believe or not believe. And certainly that has been my experience. I have had multiple spiritual awakenings, and I don't live the way I used to. Why? Because I practice the steps every single day. And it's not easy, that I can assure you. This is not a program for the faint of heart, because that is not an easy program, but it's a very rewarding program. And so the steps will set you free. The principles will set you free. Honesty, that's step 1, and it actually pervades all the steps. 2, hope. 3, surrender. 4, courage. Those things are very powerful. If we practice these principles, we will get different results. And if we don't practice them, that's really the bottom line. If we pray and meditate, we're going to get very different results than if we don't do it. And wanting to do or feeling like doing it is absolutely not a requirement. Who cares if you feel like doing something or not? You just have to do it. It's a program of action. And that has set me free, and I can attest to that. And I know that my life is very different from what it used to be. And so that I can share with complete assurance. Thank you.
Got someone else with their hand up, but we don't have a name on there. It's just a phone number. So if a 973 area code person would like to share.
Yeah, I would. Hi, thank you so much for calling on me. My name is Toby. I'm a very grateful alcoholic. God is mentioned in every single step except for one. It mentions providence. And I followed that good orderly direction every single day of my life since I got into AA. Brad, you have a terrific message, and I identify with recovery as an inside job. And it doesn't matter what's going on outside. It matters what's going on inside. And I too was looking for love in all the wrong places. And I too have found love within myself, within AA. And it's the greatest gift that I've learned how to accept. I identify with you finding it hard to accept love. I didn't know what it felt like when I came into AA. I had it confused with some other things. And I had to learn one day at a time that God loves me very much and that I deserve that love and that I could learn to love myself. So every day I tell myself, I love you, Toby. And I can do that in front of the mirror and I can tell all of you people. And it's a wonderful gift because when I came into AA, I didn't feel that way. I felt sad, lonely, hurt, afraid, angry, and much more. And I was very confused. Today, I'm not so confused. And I follow that good orderly direction each day because I do not want to pick up that first drink. I do not have to ever again. It's all by the grace of God. And I feel so blessed to be at this meeting and having the opportunity to hear you, Brad. Thank you very much.
I'm going to jump in and call on somebody. How about my friend Sarah M. in Boulder?
Hey, Tom. Hi, everybody. My name's Sarah. I'm an alcoholic and joining here from Colorado. Brad, thank you so much for sharing and your honesty. And I think that's what this deal is really about, you know. I just was thinking a lot of things, like I really related to this idea, like of always wanting to be important, whether, you know, in sobriety or not. And so, you know, these like, I don't know, like, what do they call them, like worldly clamors, right? I always think about the second half of the first step and this idea that like, you know, why is my life unmanageable? And it's usually because I'm just railroading my way through life. And I try to get power from a lot of places. And one of them is what people think of me, you know, and how important I am. And God forbid somebody step on that, right? And it's like two sides of the same coin. Like when I write inventory and I get to the third column and I'm looking at self-esteem, if that button's getting pushed, it's like I am Sarah M or I'm nothing, you know, like I'm a loser. One of those two, it doesn't matter which. I think I'm really important or I'm really not, but the button gets pushed. And that's the God stuff for me. Is like I've just really been struck lately with this idea of like, how do I just play the role I've been assigned? Like, and that's it. Like, that's my meditation in the morning. And my 11th step is like, no more, no less, like not trying to be more than what I am and not diminishing what I am either. You know, how do I just show up and do this deal? I'm really glad that I was like brought up in a place where you go through the steps once, you know, because that's a lifelong journey. But I really related, especially to what you were saying about just, I mean, Bill W speaks my language, you know, and you know, he's great too. And I think that's all for me, but it's really good to see everybody's face. Thanks for calling on me, Tom.
Kate just said she wants to share.
Thanks, Brad. Hey, everyone. My name is Kate and I'm an alcoholic. Great meeting. I love what's been shared. So I was thinking when you were talking, I had this situation that came up a couple weeks ago. We had our FOTS Midwest conference, and as part of that conference, we play a pretty ferocious round of Big Book Jeopardy. And if there's one thing I'm good at, it's quoting the big book, maybe not as much practicing what is coming out of my mouth, but I'm really good at quoting just because of how my memory works. And so when you ask me for a word, word for word, line by line, I can do that pretty well. And I wasn't going to play it all, okay, but I played because Brad was hosting it and I thought that he would want me to. So there's the first thing, right? I'm doing what I think other people want me to do. So I play, and at that point, like everybody else had formed their teams, like all the younger people, with their friends and stuff. And so the people left were like the people who are a little bit older and perhaps, longer sober and therefore knew more about the book. Basically, what happened was me and a guy named Steve T from Nashville, whose big book knowledge is probably superior to anyone's. We ended up on the same team, okay? And we smashed these people. I mean, it was brutal, okay? And I enjoyed every minute of it. I mean, we're doing the Iggy Shuffle. It is all ego. It's ridiculous. Okay, Brad, you're not muted, just so you know. So it's getting pretty rough. And afterwards, I'm just having a great time and thinking about how great we are and making jokes. And they're going to put it up on the little website that we're the winning team, and they take our picture and a picture of all the scores or whatever. And the next day, I like get on the microphone and make a couple comments about it, and I'm just having a really good time. And it turns out that a couple girls were pretty offended by the way that my team was acting. And I'm going to go so far and to say, like, probably by the way that I was acting. And so some statements were made that it wasn't loving and tolerant. And right away, like, my ego gets in there. I want to protect myself. And so my first thought is, well, it sounds like I gave them a chance to practice love and tolerance, the very principles that were so important to them, right? Right away, I'm building a case, and I'm right, okay? In a way, I'm right. And what took me a while to see, because it was still bothering me, and I finally called my sponsor. It's like, why do I care so much? Well, partly I care because I care what other people think, and I do have an ego in AA, and I want people to think that I'm spiritual, right? So that's part of why I care. But after this conversation with my sponsor, what started to come out was that I failed to recognize that, like, in some ways, I do have a power with Women in Alcoholics Anonymous, right? Like, I've been sober for a while. I'm on the committee. So these women are like newer. They're coming to this conference. They probably don't know as many people. I'm on the committee. I'm on a panel. You know what I mean? My outfit's on point. Like, I have a responsibility to perhaps show up a little bit differently. And so what occurred to me, and I'm not saying I'm going to practice this, so don't hold me to it next year, but at least what I've started to see is, like, maybe instead of putting together a team of like the best people, so we can smash at Big Book Jeopardy, like, maybe we split up and join some of these younger people and give them a chance to win, right? Like, maybe it's more important that people get to have a good time and feel welcome than that I get to feed my ego. But the reason that I was thinking about that with Brad is because you're really good at finding a balance of recognizing, like, hey, I might have some power here. And the truth of it is, like, I'm nobody, right? I mean, I just told you how I acted at Big Book Jeopardy. Pretty ridiculous, okay? So I'm not this real spiritual person, but at the same time, like, I have some power with women, and I can use that in a way that serves God, or I can use that in a way that serves me. And Brad, you have been an inspiration to me and how you use that power. I don't know if you guys know this, but some people in our little part of the world think that, Brad T is pretty special. And so I see you walk that and not abuse that and not let it, feed you, but also use it to help, other men in Alcoholics Anonymous. So I just wanted to share that. It's good to be with you all tonight. And thanks again, everyone.
Well, Tom, I don't know who else is on there. Anybody else want to share?
Danny C. in Indonesia.
Tom looks like he's filming a shark right now. What about Chris H from Astoria, Oregon?
My name's Chris Elmers. I'm an alcoholic, and Brad, you've ruined it. I've hung out in this meeting for a year and a half, quiet. Nobody's ever, nope. And you come along, yeah, how can I be somebody in an anonymous program? Yeah, I feel that, God bless you. I don't know how some of you survive it, yeah, there's that little shop of horrors thing and that plant, and it just feed me, feed me, feed me. And pretty soon, we're throwing bodies in there. And I understand that spot. There's a deal that's been running around in my head, and it comes from this meeting, and it's about this flow, right? It's the flow of God's love, not to me, but through me. And when it doesn't flow through me, I get this thing called cavitation, right? Imbalance. He's pushing back and forth. If you've ever been in a car and rolled down one window, that fluttering noise, that's cavitation. That's what happens to me. My God doesn't seek my adoration of him. He wants me to go help his other kids. He'll take care of me, but go help my other kids. And there's a deal on the internet that I like of, it's called Playing for Change, and it's musicians from around the world. And they play a number of really, songs that are dear to me, Knocking on Heaven's Door and Stand By Me and a couple of others. But each musician just gets a tiny little part. And that's my job, is to just figure out what my tiny little part of the song is and put it out there. I'm not supposed to be the soloist up there in the middle in front of everybody, just sing my little part. And that seems to bring the result about, So it seems to be a process. It's not an event, My diploma is lost in the mail someplace. It's more than enough out of me. I love you all, and there's very little you can do about it.
How about my friend Sarah from Virginia?
Hey everyone, Brad, it was so awesome to get to hear you speak for the first time. It was a pleasure meeting you all at FOPS last month. And, first of all, I hope your son is okay. I'm sure that's terrifying, and I'm sorry. I have an almost 16-year-old daughter, and I get it, talk about powerlessness. So I will say, I love this essay because I'm definitely guilty of attachments, and I'm trying really hard right now to live in a way that's free of dependencies on people. And in practicing this stuff, especially the 11th, like Don gave me this assignment, because I was doing my 11th step in the morning, but I was neglecting the evening part. So, trying to live in this 24 hours, I'm really just trying to keep sanity and a balance. So what happened to me is I went out after 5 years in this program, and I was very active. And what was frightening for me is it took me 5 years to come back. Kurt Z always talks about, that initial third step that I took in 2011 when I first got sober. I did mean it because my bottom was very low. I was gutted. I lost my marriage. I lost my children. I lost my job. My mom died. I have a almost 13-year-old son now, but back at the time, for the first 5 years of his life, he was tube fed. He couldn't eat or drink my mouth. So every feeding was syringe, and I had no hope. And talk about wanting to off yourself. I mean, I just lived in that misery and that darkness. And one day at a time, AA gave me hope, doing this stuff very poorly. I trudged the road to happy destiny. And at 5 years, I got, I never got the husband back, but I got my kids back. I got a great job. I was getting promoted. I got a hot boyfriend, and I blew it to smithereens and I drank. looking back, it's the best thing that happened to me. It took me 5 years to come back in here. And I had the whole experience of wanting to get sober and not being able to, and that sucked. It was, so now I'm in here, and pretty soon I'll have 11 months, and my whole perspective on sobriety and the spiritual journey has just completely shifted. I don't want to be important. I'm somebody that likes being under the radar and being a nobody. I'm a very good behind the scenes worker. I don't like the pressure of, being noticed or being put on a pedestal. But that said, I just mentioned the dependency. Sometimes there are certain people or things where I do want to be recognized. Oh, I hope somebody saw me do that thing. And what is that? But I think I just want to say, I'm very grateful for my life. And I know how quickly it can be taken away from me in here, because I suffer from the alcoholic mind. And right now I'm in a good spiritual place, and things are good and things are even. I know none of that's permanent. It's a constant shift. So that's why I just try to practice just staying even. I really try to I have a great home group that's really just been saving my tail. We meet Wednesday and Sunday nights, and Brad, you actually know people in that. So that's awesome. We should get you to speak there. But I'm just a friend to everybody. I just practice trying to be a friend. I don't care if somebody is not sober yet, or if they have 20 years. I just want to be a friend. I want friends in here. I want to feel love. I want to give love. Lately I've kind of caught myself sometimes overthinking these spiritual principles, like, oh no, I just said this, or I just said that, and that was wrong. And that was something that was revealed to me in meditation last night. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to relax and live my life and let God work with me and let the stuff show up as it does. Like, stop stressing. Like, why am I trying to be perfect at 11 months sober? Right? But anyway, it was a gift to be here tonight and listen to all of you. And thank you so much, Brad.
Sam.
Can you hear me? Biggest talk I've ever heard anyone give. Really come in a little more prepared. Give you this up.
You're muted.
You're cutting in and out.
What about now? Can you hear me now?
Now we hear you, but you're frozen. No.
Is this good? All right, Brad, that was the shittiest talk I've ever heard. I really wish you'd have come a little more prepared and brought something worth a shit to this meeting, but at least you showed up. I'm just kidding. Hey, for me, the real beautiful part about this essay and everything you shared is that a lot of the belief systems and just the subconscious, we're in that essay, it talks about how can our dumb and raging Mr. Hyde, our subconscious, from which so many of our phony aspirations still stream, be brought into line with what we actually know, want, and etc. My entire life, I had a subconscious picture of this is what a man looks like. This is what it looks like when you're 20. This is what it looks like when you're 30. This is what my life should look like when I'm 40. This is what, and some of the most beautiful things that have happened to me have been as a result of truly learning how to lay that stuff down and live in the present and try and serve God in the present moment. Like, that's where the peace is, like that whole cease fighting anything and everyone. I think that the real key part of that is if I'm fighting something, I'm trying to push my projection of what I think something should be, or how somebody should act, or any of those things. And it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm wrong, but I'm not the one who should be doing the pushing or changing. My ego wants to take a certain observation and make a judgment and start trying to change people and all this other stuff. And man, I've done it. You know, we've been moving all day, so my brain's a little fried. But I'll tell you, there have been times where I have felt completely screwed at different periods of sobriety, you know, like 15 years sobriety, 14 years sobriety. Look what you did. You made the biggest mess. Look at this heap of shit, what this turned into. You know what I mean? It all looked great. It was going uphill for a long time, and now it's just nosedived. And I got no idea how you're going to climb your way out of this kind of thing. And you're probably going to be alone and broke for the rest of your life. You know, now is when you need to just like, you know, get on some state assistance or disability, probably move back into a halfway house, never get laid again, never have any good, you know, you've already used up all your chances. And every time I surrender myself back to the step work, I lose a little bit of my agenda. And every time I lose a little bit of my agenda, this whole new beautiful path opens up, you know, stuff that I didn't even know that I wanted, stuff that I didn't even know, you know. And when I'm in that mental, and I get disturbed a lot, but when I'm disturbed about what other people think about me, and it just happens kind of subconsciously, you know what I mean? Like I just, all of a sudden something will come up. Like there's a guy that does business with us that I bought one store and he still has other store down there, and he hired this guy to run it, and he pisses me off sometimes. And sometimes I just want to be like, you know, sometimes I just want to be like, does that son of a bitch know who I am and what I could do to him? You know, like he's lucky I'm being nice. You know what I'm saying? Like there's this thing that comes on and goes, man, this guy's lucky I'm being nice. He's lucky I'm in the AA program and I'm working this whole path of humility and unconditional love. Because if not, I would throat punch him and I would ruin his life. And, you know, when I start to have thoughts like that, it's because I think that something's being taken from me. You know, it's because I'm in that ego framework. I'm living my life by those bookends of this is what your life should look like, and this guy's getting in the way. This is what's going to make you happy, and this is what's getting in the way. And it should be a barometer. Resentment, fear, frustration, all that stuff is just a barometer for me that I'm not in that awakened space. I'm living under the delusion that I can wrestle satisfaction and happiness out of this life if only I manage well. And I'm doing that for the 1418 billionth time, you know? And as soon as that comes into my awareness, I can let it go and just release my grip on life and go, hey, I'm in the present moment right now. I don't have to let these crap belief systems that have just, because they never do me any good. You know, like whenever I get what I want, it's not enough. You know, there's never enough. There's no way to feed what Chuck C used to say. There's no way to feed the human ego. It's never enough. It's never enough. There's never enough approval. There's never enough money. There's never enough any of that kind of stuff. And, you know, I was sitting around in this place that my wife and I got together. And none of this was stuff that I thought was going to happen or that I would even thought I wanted. And, I mean, I was just sitting here while we were listening to this meeting, and I was just like so overwhelmed with gratitude about wanting what I have, you know, instead of wondering, you know, what it is that I'm not getting. And I think the key to AA always gives us that secret. I wish I could tattoo it on my arm, is love and service and humility. Those are the keys. Like if you can really if I can stay in those places, humility is about, you know, how am I serving my creator instead of trying to make a name for myself? How am I, you know, loving service is never something that I want to do. And then I start doing it and I realize that I really want to do it. And it's, you know, it changes it's done that every single time. I mean, like when I got real problems like business or relationship problems, I don't want to go to this halfway house and to do this stuff with this dipshit that probably is not going to stay sober anyway. I got bigger problems that I need to figure out. I don't want to go into jail and see the same bunch of assholes that are going to keep coming in and out and do all this stuff. And next thing you know, I go there and I do it and I feel the presence of God, and all these things just kind of melt away. You know, and I've just done that. I've done that so many times that I don't ever do it out of virtue anymore. It's just because it's a necessity. It's my lifeline. So anyway, beautiful share tonight. I was just kidding. It was beautiful. And I'm glad I got to listen to it, and I appreciate you very much. I love you, buddy. You're a great man. One of my heroes.
Love you, man.
I think it's 9 o'clock. Is Sam going to take us out with a prayer like he does?
Hey man, let's maybe go to our inner room, say the Lord's Prayer. All right. Thanks everybody for a great meeting. Brad, thank you so much for agreeing to come on here and for all that you offered tonight.
Love you, Sam.
Everybody.
Thanks so much,
Thanks,
Brad.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks,
Thank you
everybody.
so much, Brad.
Thanks,
Brad.
Brad,
Thank you, Veronica, for reading.
Thank you, Brad. Great meeting.
Thank you, guys.
Hey, Dawn.
Thank you, Brad, for your honesty.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Thanks, Brad.